one more momism I thought of. You have to hold your mouth right.
Yes.
That's right. Hold your mouth right.
You have to hold your mouth right when you're unscrewing something or using a key.
Oh,
It
right.
doesn't work unless you held your mouth right.
I've got another one that I remembered.
What?
If you don't succeed, try again.
Try again.
Okay?
I remember that.
Yes.
Mhm.
The little engine that could. Grandma read me The Little Engine That Could so many times.
Mhm.
Tutti
Oh, she
Frutti.
did. She gave that to every family as they had their first child.
Mhm.
Did.
Every family got that. Another thing she used to say is fix yourself up and act like you are somebody.
You know what I think about so much when I watch the sunset? Mom having us watch the locomotive going over Shannon Hill, and she'd stand there and say, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could.
Yeah, and the other thing she said to follow up on that
What?
was, don't worry about how you look. Just fix yourself up. Nobody's going to be looking at you anyhow.
Right, right. Yeah.
Who was it who talked about jumping around like a chicken with its head cut off?
But or not.
Who'd that come from?
Kavanaugh's or Elias?
That's probably more Kavanaugh.
I heard somebody use that the other day, and I have not heard it. Somebody on the news. I have not heard it for years.
It didn't.
I was with a lady today, one of my clients who used to work for me, and she came out with a pair of black pants. And she said, these pants will pick up everything but men and money.
That's true, isn't it, for black pants?
I talked about that all day.
Hey, Chuck, you remember this, what Helen said to Joe, was it Joe or Donnie? Remember the story? He wanted somebody to help him. And he said, can you get two
Oh,
good
yeah, I
men?
remember that. She was having a medal she had put up. And the guy came, he was going to erect it. And he said, can you get 3 good men? And she said, I can't even get one.
Would you go get my?
You lost Ann. Oh, I
No,
did.
she's there.
I don't see her.
You know what our mom used to say? I remember our mom saying all the time when we were growing up, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Right. Mhm.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, how many of you were in the car when Mom was driving the old 36 Ford and it stopped on the railroad tracks and the train was coming? Any of you remember that?
I was there.
What do you remember?
I remember grabbing John and running to safety, and Mom was left in the car.
She didn't get out, and I was in the back seat, and you always had to push the seat up to get out of the back seat, even as kids.
Bill
And
didn't
somehow I
pick you.
got through that crack behind Mom and got out of that car and ran over to the side, and Mom just sat there dumbfounded. I think she was just in such shock.
Didn't Daddy come along? No,
that
Daddy
was
was,
another time.
Well,
Daddy was the
how'd you come
Logaman
back?
Hill one. Were you in the car on Logaman Hill when she backed down and
Let's go back to the train
got it
track.
against the wall?
Let's do one at a time.
Yeah, the train track. How did she get free?
Well, the
Did
train
you kids all
stopped.
push it?
The locomotive stopped about
Oh,
10 feet from the car. It was very close.
oh.
And he got out and he just railed at Mom. Remember that, Bill?
Yes.
He really just railed at her. Because I think she looked up and she saw the train coming, and it's somehow or another she stalled because she was nervous.
Nervous?
Well, it wasn't an automatic transmission. It's easy to stall manual.
What do you
Yes.
remember, Bill?
What do you
Bill,
remember?
what do you remember about it, besides running over to the side?
With John, you left your sisters, took off with John.
John,
I guess John was the baby.
the baby.
No, John was
Tracy was.
I must have been about 4 or 5.
You
He left
did.
the little girls. Oh my goodness.
For the girls.
He left the little girls.
Yeah, Bill.
Just think what could have happened.
How about the
I didn't have time to think.
How
Did
old were
Mom
you?
tell you to get out, or you just felt that you had to get out because the train was coming?
Yep.
Did Mom?
It
did-
was
tell you-
scary. It was really scary. I thought the train was going to hit us.
They said.
It was
Terrible.
really,
That's how I.
How did the car get off the track?
she started it up again.
Hmm.
The locomotive stopped. He got out and yelled around at her, and then she started up again. We all got back in, but it was pretty scary.
She didn't drive again, did she? And then
No,
it stopped?
the one, when it stopped on Logaman Hill,
Now you
remember
can
the
tell
time
that story.
she was going up Logaman Hill, and she always shifted down to second on her way up. And this time she thought, oh, maybe I can make it all the way to the top. And she
The
couldn't
top?
make it all the way to the top. And as she was trying to shift, she lost control of it, and it went backwards into the side of on the left side of the road, about halfway up Logaman Hill.
Hmm.
And
Who
we
was
got
in
out
the
and
car?
walked home, and
Who was-
Bill, Daddy came along, and he said, my gosh, that looks a lot like my car. I'm sure glad it isn't. He got closer to it and said, that is my car.
The car?
And he
You
never
know,
let that story die. Poor mom, she should put him in a bottle and put a cork in it.
Coke
But
in it.
that was when she stopped driving. She never
Oh, that-
drove again.
That was the last time. Wow.
Our dad told a story about Pete Breyer. He had an old car, I think back early 30s, and it had a stick shift on the floor.
In the floor.
And when it would go up a hill, it would start chugging and the transmission would vibrate. Our dad said he never would shift gears.
Who is this?
Pete Breyer
Pete
said
Breyer. Okay.
that he said the gear shift would finally wiggle and come back down into the lower gear.
Mm-mm.
But he'd get over the top.
Did he get over the top?
But,
So did he get over the top?
oh yeah, it'd shift gears automatically.
I'm not going to the top.
How could that happen?
Who was with
It just-
Mom on Logaman Hill?
Gravity, it came back down.
I was with her.
I was with her.
You did?
Were you with her on Logaman Hill, Dad?
Yes.
So you all walked home.
Yep.
She tried to start it, but it was, it was on the side of the road, and it was kind of.
One wheel up in the air.
She had bad luck. She probably would have been better with an automatic transmission.
Yeah.
But
She
really-
would've.
really as
Remember when
good
we
as-
got the automatic transmission, we begged her to drive because she was an excellent driver. She just wouldn't do it. She just refused.
Well, we
But
had,
it's lucky.
remember we had the Chrysler he bought,
Yeah.
big Chrysler. I was gonna teach Mom how to drive. We went down by Blair's, and she was driving along. She turned the corner. She turned on the turn signal, turned the corner, and it didn't cancel. So I said, just pull down on it. She did pull down on it, and then she held up her hand. She had the
What did she have? The handle came off?
the handle came off. She broke it off. Felt bad about that too. I don't think she drove again after that.
But
was-
she always renewed her license every year. I
Yeah.
think she still had her license when she died.
No,
I
she
forgot.
had ID then. They stopped giving licenses, so she had Kansas ID when she died.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, she was the designated driver for us learning how to drive.
Not
Yeah.
the car.
She was good at putting on the brake on the right side of the car. Remember how she was always braking? She was always putting her foot down when we were supposed to be braking.
Well, the old Ford didn't have any brakes.
No brakes.
They didn't work very good.
Did Mom drive it?
Hydraulic brakes was a great thing when they first came out. I think it may have been 1940, 41.
Hmm.
Those old mechanical brakes.
The brakes.
I remember that was one of, see, those old cars, every 15,000 miles, you had to do several things. You had to do the points, you had to do the tires, new tires, and you had to do new mufflers.
The muffler.
That was routine.
Mm.
And the brakes were about every 1,000 miles. You had to tighten them up.
You remember the Nash when it was new?
Yeah,
It was pretty, wasn't it? Such a pretty blue.
I remember Dad and I were picking peaches one time,
Peaches.
and he always had magazines to put in the bottom of the basket.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking through the magazine, and here was an advertisement for the Nash. And I
Nash.
showed it to him. I said, that would sure be a nice car.
You're the one.
Harold Spillman bought a Nash, remember?
Well, he was always into the mechanics of the cars.
Car.
He was thrilled by the Tucker automobile. But the Nash, he liked it because it got such good mileage.
Mhm.
And it was a comfortable car.
How many miles did it get? Do you remember?
Yeah. They loaded it up and came to Biloxi to visit me, and he bragged about getting 27 miles. That was before interstates,
Wow,
winding hills.
On the hills.
that's more than a lot of cars today get.
Exactly.
I remember him saying one of the reasons it got such good mileage is because it was shaped like a raindrop
Yeah,
coming
it's
through the air.
dynamic.
Mhm.
Well, exactly. That's what he
So it
said.
didn't have much wind resistance.
That's what helped it.
But you know, you remember how it was made? It was boxy over the tires, so it would not make a sharp turn. You could not make a sharp turn with it. So parking was horrible. It was so hard to drive. I don't know how many of you drove the Nash. You
Nash.
did, didn't you, Ann?
Yes, I did. Not the first one, the second one. The green one,
Green, wasn't it?
green. Two
Yeah.
colors, two shades.
I
of
was driving the blue Nash, going down Fifth Street Viaduct, going up North Atchison. A bunch of my classmates had gotten together, and the brakes went out. So I went clear up to St. Benedict's College, and Daddy had a fit because he had to come up there. Well, I thought the brakes are out wherever I am, so what difference does it make? You know? But I had people in the car that lived up there, so I just went on up there.
Well, what happened to the brakes? They were hydraulic brakes, of course.
Yeah.
I haven't a clue, Bill. I'm not that kind of mind. I just know I had no brakes going down Fifth Street.
I remember my dad trying out a new car back in those days, and it had the first automatic transmission. And he was bragging about the automatic transmission, how smooth it was. And he said, and if you stop on a hill, you don't have to put on the brakes. It'll hold its position.
The brakes.
Was it a Nash Rambler?
No,
What was it? Just a Nash?
Nash Statesman.
Nathan.
Nash Statesman.
Hmm.
I want to see what it looked like.
How did you all learn how to drive?
One trip with Daddy going down south, went down to St. Patrick's and back, and that was it.
That's it.
I remember him over the gravel hills. You get to the right, watch. Now, who's behind you? Who's in front of you? Always know where all the cars are around you. Now, how many cars were on that road? Not very many.
it was.
Anyway, that was it.
That's it.
It's a pretty car.
Chuck had a nice car.
Nice car.
I had a 53 Ford, a blue one.
Blue one.
Here's a funny story about Charlie Curran related to what Mary Kay just said. He was out looking at the corn, driving along, looking at the corn. He went over this little hill and he was on the wrong side of the road. And another farmer came by and he was on the wrong side of the road. So they just passed on the top of the hill.
Oh my gosh.
And
There
where,
was, there was another story about the Nash.
Nash.
Who was the guy that just ran for president against Obama?
Romney?
Mitt
Romney.
Romney.
Yeah. Well, my dad used to brag about Romney, his father, who was president of the Nash Motor Car Company, because he did such a good job of managing. He was written up in a lot of the papers. You know, my dad always spoke about that, and he thought he was a genius.
Genius.
Mm. George. That was George Romney, wasn't it?
That was George Romney, yes. It had a good air conditioner because the company started out as the Kelvinator company that made refrigerators.
Refrigerators.
oh, I knew it'd make it cold.
I thought the
Oh.
Chrysler was the first air-conditioned car we had.
I thought it was too.
The Nash air conditioner, that was in the advertisement I was looking at on the
I
picture.
don't think it was air-conditioned.
We
I don't
didn't
think
get it,
Daddy
though.
did that upgrade.
Yeah, we were so proud of the Chrysler going to
It was
Decatur.
available, I know that.
Look at that.
Remember how
So-
Grandpa,
So Chuck, tell us about your car, and then we'll have Ann and Dorothy tell their experiences with your car. This needs to be kept for posterity for sure.
It will be. It's on the YouTube already.
Is it?
It will be.
Will be.
You know-
Someone should watch this again and write down all these stories.
Yeah, you know, several years ago, I used to get Julie to get the magazine for me at the grocery store. I forget the name of it now, but it was about cars, and people would advertise their old cars. And I saw in there a 1928 Whippet coupe, just like our dad had. I said that would sure be a nice antique car to have. And I put off calling the guy. He lived in Indiana. And finally I called him. He said he sold it. Sold it for $50,000.
Why didn't Daddy bring the whippet from Donovan? Well, I guess it was just the case of it.
Got the
There wasn't
30
any motor in it anymore, was there? That set down the hill from the Elias place.
Oh, they let it kind of rot? I didn't know that.
I don't know.
He left it up at Grandpa's?
Yeah. I wondered why he never brought it to Atchison.
It wasn't running anymore. I don't think he dated Mom. When he was dating Mom, he drove it,
Uh-huh.
but it must have conked out because it was
I know it conked out, but
junked up there in the
I
lane.
don't think he ever drove it when he was a bee inspector, did he?
I have no idea what he drove when he was a bee
He
inspector.
drove the 35 Ford when he was a bee inspector, but I don't know if he ever, before that, drove the Whippet.
Hmm.
It wasn't the Ford, the 38 Ford?
This was a coupe, Rumble City.
Cute.
Oh,
Rub my seat.
So let's hear the story of the 53 Ford. One more time.
One more time.
Ann and Dorothy.
Chuck isn't gonna give a prelude to it, introduction?
I was not present.
But you bought
Your
it.
car, what stories do you have with your car?
You bought it.
Wasn't I at you though when that happened? I had the TR3. I went to Lawrence and I gave you the 53 Ford.
You took me out the night before and showed me the gears.
It's all set.
You didn't remember.
No, I didn't. And I went out the first morning and backed it like we did. We parked by the honey house, backed it around the corner out onto the road, and went all the way down to the dump before I could get it going. And I knew how to shift gears. I just didn't know how to go up hills. So I finally had to go up the hill in low. And then you get over to the mount and you can tell from the name that it's on a hill. And there was no way to approach the mount without going up a hill. And I would come down Price Boulevard and make that corner and go up Spring Street. And there were old guys sitting out on the porches that would wait for Dorothy and me every morning because I could never make the hill. I always had to downshift and I'd come back down by them. And then I would go up in low and finally get there. And it had a hole in the floor so you could see, if you looked down while you were driving, you could see the pavement underneath. And one day, and it had no turn signals, so you had to put your hand out to do the turn signals. And I put my hand out one day and half the window fell out. So I stopped the car and had Dorothy go back and get the window. And then we put it in because it was cracked acrosswise, so you could stick it in. But if you left it rolled up, it would stay in. And after that, Dorothy had to ride in the back seat with the little curved window that only went down about a third of the way. And she would put her hand out and do the turn signals. And then it whistled like a tea kettle.
Right.
But not if I had on the gas. So I used to go, if I saw anybody I knew, I would rev it up.
Price was right though, Ann.
What was that?
The price was right.
Price was perfect.
Yeah.
My first car.
Oh,
Got it.
who bought the car? I thought Charles bought the car.
I did.
But it was Ann's first car that he gave to her.
He gave it to Dorothy and me
Oh,
when he left for Lawrence. But I had never driven a stick shift, so I had no idea. So all I knew was the gears, and I knew it had a clutch, that you had to do something with the clutch.
And how about you, Dottie? Did you ever drive it?
I did, and I remember one time I was over at Benedictine College, taking a course, and I parked on the hill, and someone was stupid enough to park in front of me, and I thought, oh, I gotta wait till they leave. I don't want to hit them. I'm gonna start the car and roll down and hit them. So I waited about a half hour or so for them to leave, because I didn't want to hit the car ahead of me.
And they did leave, and so you
So I was able to get out.
drove off.
Yeah.
My, what
I
we
was
went
able
through.
to sell it. Chuck sold that car, didn't you, Chuck?
I paid $150 for that car and I sold it for $50.
Mm.
The guy that bought it didn't have any shocks either. It just went wherever it wanted to go. And he bought that and he lived south of Lawrence. He drove it home, and the next day he said he got home and he got out and he kept throwing up. He said, man, the fumes coming out of the floor, bouncing up and down all the way.
Did he know what he was getting?
Nobody what?
Did he know what he was getting? Did he look at it before he gave you the $50?
I guess that's all he did. He looked at it.
It was dependable.
Price was right.
well,
Definitely.
that was after the war. The Ford should have been better then.
Yeah, better than that.
It had very few miles on it. 3, 4.
Most of them backwards. Weren't we, Dorothy
Yeah.
and I, racing
Taking
them
them
when we
off.
were going down the hill?
We were taking them off
Most of them backwards.
the odometer.
Couldn't hear that.
Right.
Somebody does have to sit in front of this and record all of these. Got to be in the next book, right, Ann?
Who's doing a book?
Not.
Not me.
You've been designated, it sounds like.
I was reading the other day how people can hack Zoom.
Yeah, they've been hacking meetings. When people are
maybe
working from home, they hack their
A
meetings.
book about this someday.
Oh, really?
So we don't know
You
who's
think they'd be
hacking us.
interested in us?
I guess.
Hmm.
Well, I remember Daddy taking me down south. We drove down on the gravel roads. That was the only practice I had. But I had driven the tractor, the Ferguson, in the field, and I had also driven the old truck. So I knew a little bit about gear shifts, but I never drove it on the road. I just drove it in the hayfield. I think I was driving the tractor when I was 11 and the truck when I was 12 or 13. But it was just to pick up bales, and it was like, just forward. It's about all they would let me do. But the Nash was automatic, so that was pretty easy.
Only
But
the-
that's all we had. And then Mom drove around with us. I mean, she had her license at that point, and she was with us when we drove with the permit
Mhm.
until we could get our license. We could get our license at 16, and I think it's now older, isn't it?
It was 14 in the country. It was 16
Had
to
it at
everybody, but if you
14.
lived on a farm, you could get it at 14.
That's
Right.
right.
Bill, remember I drove your pickup truck to take my driver's license?
I
Pickup
know
truck you brought home from Mississippi, you let me drive it?
you
Yeah.
did.
That wasn't something when them you parking on a hill or something. I remember that. I never driven, that's the first I'd driven that big old truck. Here I was
Really?
taking my driver's test in it.
Did you
And
pass?
did you have to parallel park?
Yeah,
Good grief.
Did anybody have arrow escapes like Mom?
No.
I had one with Daddy, but I don't know how narrow it was, but it was like 4th of July, and 4th of July, everyone would come, all the Kavanaughs would come to our place, and we'd have a cookout with the grill and the picnic table and that whole thing. And I had to go change the chart, and Daddy drove me up, and I changed the chart, came back out. Daddy said, "You drive back up to the house." I said, "I don't want to drive." I had never driven before, so I must have been about 15 or so. But anyway, he had me drive, and it was a stick shift. So I should have known when Chuck showed me the gears, I was having this experience, I should have known how to drive, but I didn't. But anyway, Daddy had me drive up the hill. And so I go down the hill up, and he keeps telling me I've got to give it the gas or it's going to die. So I am roaring up the hill. I go around the corner into the driveway, and John has his car parked there by the honey house, and I am headed right for the honey house. Daddy is grabbing the wheel. I have my foot down on the gas. He gets it away from the car, but then we're headed toward that big maple tree. And we end up out past the range house in the orchard. Finally stopped. And of course, everyone is outside south of the house, and they see us go by, and Daddy is humiliated. And I never drove for years after that. But yeah, it was harrowing.
That's
you
pretty
talk-
traumatic.
I gotta hear, Ann, is what our dad said when the car stopped.
What was that?
What our dad said when the car finally stopped.
Oh, right. Yeah, he was not happy with me.
when you talked about coming down the hill, think about the old dump and how many things we dragged out of that dump and used. Remember, we got a scooter one time. We thought it was the greatest thing.
Did.
And Teresa and I got a table that we used to have tea parties. But yeah, there was lots of stuff in that dump that we rescued and used.
And that scooter it didn't have anything to guide it with, or I think it only had one handle or something. It wasn't much to it. We were so poor, we dragged stuff out of the dump.
Well, then they didn't have thrift stores.
You were recycling before it was bought.
I remember one time I was driving the 35 Ford, and our dad asked me to go out to Alfred's and get something, borrow something from him. Well, I went out there and Alfred was out in the field. So at the field, it was kind of like our hill. You had to go down and up a hill. And he was in there working. So I stopped the car, got out, went, told him what I needed. And then I backed up to turn around, and the car went clunk,
Crunk.
and both back wheels are spinning in the air.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think our dad ever knew about that because I told Alfred not to tell him. He had the tractor.
Why were they up in the air, Bill?
What?
Why were they in the air?
Because there was a big cliff back there.
Oh my
It
God.
was hidden by the trees.
Mm.
Oh,
So how did you get out of it?
He had a tractor and pulled me out.
Oh my gosh. So Daddy never knew it.
I remember another time I was coming back with the Dodge truck, and that was a long wheelbase coming back from Alfred's. And if you remember, the road curved around the hill, gravel road, and I was going too fast. And I slipped on the gravel and I went around that road sideways.
Mm.
That's scary.
That scared me, I'll tell you.
Lucky nobody was coming.
Hmm.